Hello, Mr. Galloway, British MP. I've had a lot of trouble trying to work out what to make of you, sir. I don't particularly wish to insult you, but I grew up with politicians of one sort or another. I had regular contact with George Herbert Walker Bush from the age of 4 years on up until I was about 16. And then semi-regular contact with him. He was my handler while he was from 1961 through to when he was the Southeast Asia Bureau Chief, and he saw less of me when he became Assistant Director and then Director of the CIA. He was my handler in a black operation which down here called the family cult. What its purpose was to film politicians in paedophilia situations, and they'd then blackmail them. Now if the person was headed for a really high political position, there was a Lithuanian Jewish man by the name of Karl Kolb, who I would not be surprised if you'd met him in one situation or another. He was a heavy-set bald man of about 5'10". His main discriminating feature was he was the actual inspiration for Rolf Harris's song Jake the Peg, because he had his extra leg. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those pictures with the African men whose penis hangs down almost to their knee when they're not erect, but he was 2/3 of that. His penis fully erect. This needs to be said because later on it applies to what he did with what he was. His fully erect penis was between 2.5 to 3 beer cans in width and length, and he often killed people with it. Sometimes raped them and left them to bleed, although mostly he'd rape them for a couple of minutes and then shoot them in the back of the head. I was 5 years old the first time I saw him do this in the control of the CIA. In other words, I'd been got at, and while I was in foster care, and they got this young, beautiful 18-year-old prostitute, and he started to have sex with her, and she complained, and he said, "I know what I'm doing," and he put it in her ass, and she started to scream, and then bit her tongue and looked at me and stifled the scream. And the last words she said was, "Dear God," I heard her whisper, "Dear God, don't let her hurt the boy, please." And then bang, he shot her in the back of the head. Just blew her brains out. I was 5 years old at the time. The reason I need to talk to you, Mr. Galloway, is because many politicians in the world have been blackmailed in this one way, and we're talking in the multiple hundreds, and they're all being pretty well kept under control because no one man dares speak out, because otherwise the photographs or the films will leak out. It's bad enough them committing pedophilia, but when the child is shot dead on film and the politician hasn't reported it for 5, 10, 20, 30, or in George Bush Senior's case, 1967, that's 41 years. I personally saw him rape Anna Beaumont anally, and she was whimpering, and he twisted her ear and stuff, and he said, "Watch out." George Bush said to Karl Kolb, "Watch out or you'll get worse." He was talking to Anna, but he looked at Karl Kolb, and then Karl Kolb got on up on the table bed thing behind Jane Beaumont, the eldest, and he got himself erect and he put it into her vagina and he tore her open. I have not yet even remotely begun to deal with the trauma from that. I mean, it was trauma for Jane Beaumont, but the screams that that little girl let out, I haven't touched it. I just can't. Oh, it'll take a good woman quite a few years to get close to that. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you this is that I need to be able to talk to you about some of the things that are happening in this world. You're up to speed on quite a few things. Now, I have had an excellent education courtesy of the CIA on the way that politics really works in the world. Now, I don't plan to support a revolution as such, nor do I plan to expose particularly the men that were doing it, but what I want it to do is to stop. I want the spirit of the way things are done in this world to stop. I want them to change. I want different things to happen. The only way that that can possibly happen is if people get together in America, but also in England and in Germany and in other places, and pass a 100% congressional law, an amnesty law, where if people have been politically blackmailed over any subject whatsoever, including murder, and they agree to tell the truth, like in the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission guidelines, then they get a 100% amnesty. And that's an amnesty on bowing to the it's illegal to bow to blackmail, and the acts that they did under blackmail were illegal. Also, the original crime they were blackmailed over. There needs to be a 100% congressional amnesty passed on anyone, any government employee, not just politicians. You can't look after them and then feed the coppers and the office workers and support staff to the dogs. There needs to be a 100% congressional amnesty law passed, because otherwise, specifically speaking of America, they will never, ever, ever, ever again be able to tell the truth in politics. They've been morally and spiritually and even intellectually crippled. They bowed to blackmail for that long that there's no other way out. Now, I've heard these men first discuss, we'll call them Jacobean Zionists for a start. They're not Jews, and they're not Jacobeans, and they're not Zionists. Call them Jacobean Zionists. These are a group which were involved with the Normans during the takeover of Rome in 1084, and with the attack in the, when Harold got the arrow in the eye. It's the same group. They were also in a very bloody 30-year war in the top 4 levels of Freemasonry in the 1600s, when they say they started, but they didn't. They go back to the Comasines, the palace and cathedral builders of the 4th century. But in the 16th century they decided that a name change was necessary to give them some sort of anonymity for the disgusting things that they'd been up to. And so they decided to call themselves Freemasons and say, we're just starting, we're a bunch of bricklayers who've decided to get it together.